on this recent summit in Moscow, I was told one as we were leaving that they were telling among themselves. They had it that Gorbachev and I were in his limousine, and my Secret Service chief was in with us, and his top security agent with him, and we were sightseeing. And we came to a waterfall, and we all got out to look. And Gorbachev said to my Secret Service man, "Go ahead, jump, go over the falls." And he said, "I got a wife and 3 kids." Well, he turned to his own man then and said, "You, jump, go over the falls." And he did. Well, my man went down the rocks around the falls to see if he could be of help or anything, and found him out there wringing out his clothes. And he said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "When he told you to jump and go over the falls, why did you do that?" The fellow said, "I got a wife and 3 kids."
Good morning. It's Thursday, January the 5th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the daily declaration for spiritual warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have Wrapped Around the Axle, Reddit, Donald Trump, No Free Lunch, and Chapter 28 of Jinx. All that and more when I get back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, Biblical Principles to Defeat the Devil for January the 5th. O God, I will use your word like a powerful hammer to break down all of Satan's defensive borders. Your word will spread like a wildfire throughout the enemy's domain, burning up all of his works of darkness. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for January the 5th.
Your heart, face your parents, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets was bursting in air, through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the
Thank you. And now, there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Commerce tends towards rewarding inclusion, broadness, and liberality. Tribal loyalties, ethnic and religious bigotries, and irrational prejudices are bad for business. The merchant class has been conventionally distrusted by tribalist leaders from the ancient to the modern world, precisely because merchant craft tends to break down barriers between groups. Jeffrey Tucker. You can note this as a key tenet in the social organization of a free and virtuous society. You can note it as part of the human flourishing such cooperation in commerce stimulates. But it can never be forgotten that it is intrinsically an incentive. There are incentives in commerce towards greater trust, inclusion, and cooperation. The rewards he refers to are part of the incentive structure of markets. The beneficiaries are not merely the buyer and seller in a transaction, but the society at large.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. So don't get wrapped around the axle here. I'm listening to Leo 2.0, and he's having people call in, and one of them asked, one of his callers asked, who do you think should be speaker if not McCarthy? And immediately I'm thinking, both you and Leo, because Leo said, good question, and then he babbled on. But both of these folks, Leo and his listener, and probably a majority of his listeners, have been tricked by the left. Okay, you've been tricked. You've been had. Because it doesn't matter who Leo wants. It really doesn't. And the listener, it doesn't matter who he wants either. It doesn't matter who I want. It doesn't matter who you want. Okay, the fact of the matter is our opinions don't count. The only opinions that count are the people in the House of Representatives, the people on Capitol Hill. The people, as a matter of fact, the senators, the ones in the Senate, their opinion doesn't count either. The people in the administration, because somebody asked the president, hey, what's your opinion about what's going on? Nobody cares. Nobody in the House cares what President Biden has to say about the House. Nobody cares. Okay, for most people, most of the time, our opinion doesn't count. The left has tried to brainwash you into believing that it does, that everything in life is a matter of opinion. There's no reality, and everything, therefore, is a matter of opinion, and all opinions count and matter except as to popularity. And that's the whole idea, is to try to have the most popular opinion. And I'm telling you, don't waste your time. I have a rooting interest. I have a passing interest. And I get up in the morning and I find out that they're going to have their vote at 9 o'clock Western time. So at 9 o'clock, I check in, see what's happened. Because, I have a passing interest, rooting interest, because there's certain agenda items that I'm interested in. And, without a speaker, they can't do anything. So I have that, and if it hasn't been done at that time, I check back at 5 o'clock and find out what the story is, see what's going on. Have they gotten things done or not? And that's it. My opinion, your opinion, Leo Terrell's opinion will count, and does count every 2 years. Our opinion counted in November, okay, and will count again in the November of 2024, absent special elections along the way. So remember, most of the time, most situations, our opinion doesn't count. It doesn't matter. Don't waste your time getting, wrapped around the axle. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I'm on a Reddit, and there's a subreddit called Funny and Sad, and the headline reads, "But tell me again how bad Nancy Pelosi is." And it's from another Redditor, but it's been inked out, so I guess the guy didn't have the permission. Anyways, the headline, "But tell me again how bad Nancy Pelosi is." And then it goes on to read, "A brief summary of Republican House speakers in modern history. Number 1, Newt Gingrich, ousted by his own party. Number 2, Dennis Hastert, retired from the House but was sent to federal prison for paying hush money to boys he molested. Number 3, John Boehner, ousted by his own party. Number 4, Paul Ryan, resigned to avoid being ousted by his own party. Number 5, who knows, it probably won't be Kevin McCarthy. Now, I'm telling you all about this because this is triggering. The left always talks about, I'm triggered. This is what they're doing to you. This is what they do all the time. You're going to read this, and the average person is going to say, they're drawing a comparison between Nancy Pelosi and all these House speakers. Right? And you're going to want to come to the defense of either the House speakers individually, maybe Paul Ryan, maybe Newt Gingrich, whomever, or the Republican Party in general. Don't do it. Don't take the bait. The most appropriate response here is to ask questions. If you're going to respond to this Redditor, then you respond with a question. Probably the perfect question in this particular situation is, who cares? Because you see, the burden of proof is on him. It's on the burden of proof. The burden of making sure that he's communicated successfully is on him. It's not my job to try to untangle this complicated little meme, if you will. It's not my job. I don't have to try to read between the lines and try to figure out what it is he's talking about. Because in the meantime, he's going to say, I didn't say that. You come back and say, well, you're drawing a comparison or a bad comparison with Pelosi and Gingrich and all these people. And he's going to say, I didn't say that. And he didn't. Rush Limbaugh used to brag about being the mayor of Literalville or Realville. He wasn't, but he was going in the right direction there. You want to take them literally. That's the way you defeat them. You defeat these folks by taking them literally, reading this and saying, what the hell is he talking about? Ask yourself, do I really know what he's talking about? And if you don't, that's another good response. Besides, who cares, is what are you babbling about? If you don't know what else to say, you just ask the question, what are you talking about? What are you babbling about? And then watch them spin. Bzzz, because they want power. They want to jerk you around. They want to see you dance. They want to see you bubble and fizz. Don't give them the pleasure. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, former President Donald Trump promising to declare war on the drug cartels.
Fentanyl, heroin, meth, and other lethal drugs are pouring across our wide-open border, stealing hundreds of thousands of beautiful American lives, and it's happening like never before in our history. Children are being left without parents, families are being ripped apart, communities are being decimated. Our neighbors and fellow citizens are having their entire worlds destroyed like nobody thought possible. Our country is being poisoned from within by the drugs and by all of the other crime that's taking place. The drug cartels are waging war in America, and it's now time for America to wage war on the cartels. In this war, Joe Biden has sided against the United States and with the cartels. They are making more money than they've ever made before, times 10. There's never been anything like it. They're major companies. They're bigger than even some of our biggest companies. Biden's open border policies are a deadly betrayal of our nation. When I am president, it will be the policy of the United States to take down the cartels, just as we took down ISIS and the ISIS caliphate, and just as, unlike the situation we're in today, we had a very strong border, the strongest border, in fact, in the history of our country, and drugs were at a low of 45 years. There's been nothing like what we did just 2 years ago. We will show no mercy on the cartels. Every day, drug traffickers are using the waters of our region to ship their lethal poisons to America, killing so many of our people and ruining families. In addition to restoring strong border security, I will deploy all necessary military assets, including the U.S. Navy, to impose the full naval embargo on the cartels. I did that before, and it worked. What we did was incredible. We will guarantee that the waters of the Western Hemisphere are not used to traffic illicit drugs to our country. Furthermore, I will order the Department of Defense to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other overt and covert actions to inflict maximum damage on cartel leadership, infrastructure, and operations. I will designate the major cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. We will sever their access to global financial systems. I will also work to forge an unprecedented partnership with neighboring governments in our region, just like I did in Mexico. And remember, in Mexico alone, an estimated 100,000 civilians have been tragically murdered or gone missing at the hands of these cartels. The Mexican government, run by a very fine man, the president, is really working hard, but it's not working out. These cartels are vicious and they're violent, and they have Mexico for now stymied. Well, we have to help Mexico, and we have to stymie the cartels. Either we will get the full cooperation of other governments to stop this menace, or we will expose every bribe, every kickback, every payoff, and every bit of corruption that is allowing the cartels to preserve their brutal reign, and it is indeed brutal. Finally, as I have said before, I will ask Congress to pass legislation ensuring that drug smugglers and human traffickers receive the death penalty. The drug cartels and their allies in the Biden administration have the blood of countless millions on their hands. Millions and millions of families and people are being destroyed. When I'm back in the White House, the drug kingpins and vicious traffickers will never sleep soundly again. We did it once, and we did it better than anybody else. There's never been a better border than we had just 2 years ago. It was strong, it was powerful, and it was respected all over the world. And now we're laughed at all over the world. And we're not going to let that happen much longer. We have to take over. We have to be tough. We have to be smart. We have to be fair. But if we don't do something immediately, our country is gone.
And that was former President Donald Trump promising to declare war on the drug cartels if he's reelected. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 29 of Hijinks.
Chapter 29. Georgy Maximilianovich Malyenkov had accepted immediately the invitation to address Parliament, to which had been quietly added by the British ambassador the assurance that Queen Caroline would receive him in Windsor Castle. On the very same day, the U.S. ambassador called on Foreign Minister Molotov to say that the Secretary of State would be willing to travel to Moscow to confer with Soviet leaders about a number of questions. Malyenkov summoned the Politburo and gave them the news, together with his interpretation of its meaning, which attested, he said, to the objective recognition by the West of the growing power of the Soviet Union and the stability of the post-Stalin leadership, whence the decision to sue for a conciliatory relationship. Which means, of course, that we can press our plans under more auspicious circumstances than if the hostility of the West were totally mobilized. Malyenkov was clearly exuberant. Marshal Voroshilov wanted to know, did the British ambassador really say, in as many words, that Queen Caroline of England would actually receive the Soviet premier? After all, that would be the first meeting between the Soviet chief of government and a Western chief of state since Potsdam. Those were his exact words, Clement Yefremovich. Malyenkov beamed. There was light banter about the Queen, while several members of the Politburo stole glances at Beria, who finally spoke up. Tell us, Georgy Maximilianovich, did you make any concessions to the British or the Americans in order to bring on these developments? Certainly not, Lavrenti Pavlovich, certainly not. Clearly they are the result of our stable policies. Nothing on West Germany? Nothing on West Germany. Malyenkov quickly changed the subject and slid into a related matter on the agenda. Namely, what kind of a reception was it advisable to give to the American Secretary of State, renowned for his primitive anti-communism? In Washington and in London, the principal players were well rehearsed. It had been decided that since the Queen was involved, however tangentially, the critical cable would go out of Whitehall. The exact contents of that cable, discussed in personal sessions and by telephone through the scrambler system between Anthony Brogan and John Foster Dulles, were dutifully transmitted by the State Department to the United States Embassy in London by cable, confident that it would be intercepted by the Soviet mechanism they were hunting down. The cable was addressed to the U.S. ambassador in London. Later today, Whitehall will cable Malyenkov. All planned diplomatic visits are off unless we receive explicit assurances that in October, when White House and European powers meet to sign accord on West Germany, Soviet protests will be non-military. Will advise results. It was signed, as such cables are, simply Dulles. That afternoon, 2 days before his scheduled departure for London, Georgy Malyenkov sat in his office staring at the cable freshly received from London. Granted, it had none of the terseness of the American cable to the ambassador in London, the pirated text of which Malyenkov had seen a few hours earlier. Still, it demanded assurances about Soviet behavior after the forthcoming recognition of West Germany. The cable read, "Your Excellency must realize that reports having reached us in the past few days that there is a possibility of armed resistance to Allied policies respecting West Germany, HM government would need to have negative assurances before Your Excellency's arrival, as it would greatly embarrass the government if your visit were followed so quickly by armed action. And needless to say, we could not expose Her Majesty to any such possible embarrassment." The earlier part of the telegram had stated that the two governments were acting in unison, and that the trip by the Secretary of State would also be put off in the absence of such assurances. He summoned his two closest associates. Nikita Khrushchev's reaction was that he didn't like to be pushed around like that. But Bulganian, concurring with Malyenkov, said that the request was in fact reasonable, and since the Politburo had already decided that no military resistance would be put in the way of West German recognition, actually, the Soviet Union was not giving up any alternative it hadn't already agreed to discard. Moreover, we need to act quickly. It would hurt us even if the rumor got out that there might be a postponement. Malyenkov rang for his secretary. After the proposed cable was typed out, Malyenkov read it again out loud to Khrushchev and Bulganian, and they concurred that it was wise, dignified, and though conciliatory, uncompromising. "What about the Politburo?" Malyenkov asked. Khrushchev used a vernacular Russian expression, a rough translation of which was, "Fuck the Politburo." "And Beria?" The mention of Beria's name always brought a pause. But they all knew that to bring Beria into the picture would merely mean incessant delays and recriminations. They felt sure that they had the backing of the majority in the Politburo. Orders were given to dispatch the cable. Within 1 hour of reading the cabled assurance to Whitehall from Malyenkov through the mini Zerka, Comrade Belushi made his transmission to his old friend, Mr. Mussolini, in the Italian embassy. He then went to the processing machine and managed to move the date and hour of the cable he had just recorded for Malyenkov exactly 24 hours forward. He would take it to Beria tomorrow. That would give the Americans time to act, and give Beria time to act, but less time. And indeed, they did act. The next morning, early on Tuesday, U.S. Ambassador Charles Boland sent his deputy to the Kremlin with the message that it was vital that he confer with the Premier, that a great deal hung on the immediacy of that meeting. When word of this request was given to Malyenkov a few minutes later, he groaned, wondering what new conditions might now be imposed on the carefully planned itinerary, scheduled to begin on the following day with his departure for England, and to be followed next week by the reception in Moscow of the American Secretary of State. He nodded to his aide to have the ambassador admitted. In the incredibly short time of 15 minutes, the ambassador was shown in. He shook hands all the way around. Nikita Khrushchev and Marshal Bulganian were also in the room, and in his fluent Russian, smiling, said that he was authorized by the Secretary of State to give this communication only to Premier Malyenkov, in the presence of absolutely no one else, and he did not have the authority to modify these instructions, even in behalf of such illustrious members of the Politburo as Comrades Khrushchev and Bulganian. Malyenkov looked at Khrushchev, who paused, then shrugged his shoulders, signaling to Bulganian. The two men left. Ambassador Bolin delicately pointed to the interpreter. "You have never had any problem with my Russian, Your Excellency." Malyenkov motioned to his aide to leave. The two men were alone in a hall once used by the Tsar to meet ambassadors. The large vaulted windows high above their heads introduced daylight, but it was supplemented by the yellow light of the heavy crystal chandeliers overhead. "Well, Mr. Ambassador," Malyenkov pointed to the couch to one side of the huge desk, and Charles Bolin sat down. "You may proceed." "Your Excellency, we have received word in Washington from a source that has never proved wrong in any particular that a coup is being planned against you, possibly even before you leave tomorrow for Great Britain, by Comrade Berya." Malyenkov turned white, but said nothing. "Comrade Berya has procured an instrument developed in Great Britain for the purposes of astronomical research to spy on you. That instrument was activated 2 days ago by the English inventor Sir Alistair Fleetwood, who is staying here at the National Hotel under the pseudonym of Bjorn Henningsen." Ambassador Bolin passed Premier Malyenkov a 3x5 card on which the name was written. "The instrument has been installed at an office in the War Ministry on Kuibyshevo Street, which is of course directly opposite the Kremlin." "Indeed." Ambassador Bolin pointed his hand toward the outside wall of the office. "The machine sits directly over there." Bolin paused. "It is not our function to interfere in Soviet politics, but this gesture of goodwill perhaps will be recorded in your memory on future occasions." Malyenkov hardly knew how to act. On such occasions, he quickly decided extreme formality is the best guide. Accordingly, he rose, walked slowly toward the entrance door in such a way as clearly to indicate to the ambassador that the conference was over, and as he walked, said stonily, "Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your trouble. I shall certainly take what you say under advisement." The door had no sooner shut than he rang his aide and told him to advise Khrushchev and Bulganian that they were needed urgently. At once, they should both still be in the building. As the aide rushed out, he thought to himself, he had never seen Georgy Maximilianovich so excited. V.S. Abakumov, State Security Minister, and Yosef, Berya's closest personal aide, were in the office of the Lubyanka with him. Berya held up triumphantly a copy of the cable dispatched by Malyenkov to Whitehall. This does it. Malyenkov can be charged with 58. Article 58. Berya proceeded by heart. Section 1, treason against the homeland. Section 3, maintenance of relations for counter-revolutionary purposes with foreign states. Section 4, the rendering of assistance by any means whatsoever to that section of the international bourgeoisie which is endeavoring to overthrow the communist system. He is ours. We can demand a closed summary court-martial and instant execution. It will not be necessary to proceed with what we had planned for London. Malyenkov will not arrive in London. Abakumov stared at the cable. That is certainly the meat and potatoes, Lavrenti Pavlovich. A flat promise in effect to cooperate with the enemy in making an arrangement that strips us of any formal voice over the future of West Germany, in the teeth of his guarantee to the Council of Ministers that no concession was being made in the matter of West Germany in connection with his visit. Well done, Lavrenti Pavlovich, well done. Yosef said he too thought it was well done. Lavrenti Berya sat down. Let us make our plans. He was a very happy man.
And that was Chapter 29 of Hijinks by William F. Buckley, Jr. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. Until next time, remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.